Do you ever sit back and ask yourself, what happened to Christmas? You know, all of us want Christmas to be meaningful, don't we? I mean, we truly want Christmas to be merry. But it seems that somewhere along the road we've lost our way. Somewhere along the road, this time of the year when we celebrate the birth of a Savior who came to turn the world upside down with a revolutionary love that still has the power to change the world this very minute. This time of the year we call Christmas has instead turned into stress-miss and impersonal-miss and checklist-miss and consumer-miss and traffic jam-miss and even gotta buy everyone a gift even if they don't want it miss. What happened to Christmas? Well, this Advent season, this year and the time leading up to Christmas, we're attempting to intentionally reorient ourselves. And we've entered into this Advent conspiracy, and we're asking some tough questions about how we do Christmas and challenging people to really get back to what it's all about. The Advent conspiracy is based on 4 principles that we learn to worship fully, spend less, give more, and love all. So last time we talked about what it means to worship fully, and today we're going to look at the challenge for all of us to spend less.
I wonder if the worst thing we could do for our kids at Christmas time would be to give them too much. To have so many gifts around the tree that they spend the entire day unwrapping and unwrapping and unwrapping. And by the end of the day, they're so exhausted with all the unwrapping that they likely don't have the energy to play with even a few of the gifts that they've been given. That excess, that too much, is actually a bad thing. Several years ago, I got to spend a significant amount of time with a man named Ken Lay. Ken was the CEO at Enron Corp through a number of years and ultimately through the most scandalous years at Enron. He's the son of a Baptist pastor. Fascinating man. I got to spend a number of days with him, and he has a life experience that's different than anyone I've ever met, and an understanding of business and the trials that he's been through. In the course of our friendship, I finally asked Ken a question. It's a question I think every Christian has to grapple with, and yet as I raised this question to Ken, he found it to be very offensive. It's this question of how much is too much. When have I crossed the line from contentment with what I have to excess? Now, most of us would look in at Enron and executives that had 6 or 7 or 8 houses, and you think, okay, at 5 maybe you go, hey, 6 is too many, or 7's clearly that's too many houses, or the trash cans were made of marble and expensive office equipment and things that were, to us, most of us would say it's way over the top. But by the world standards, many would look in at our Christmases and say that our Christmases are equally excessive. And likely excessive in all the wrong ways. Not excessive in the fact that we're giving such extraordinary amounts, but excessive in the amount of materialism that we're piling on to our kids. More and more toys, more and more plastic video games, and to the point that they sit with this mountain of materialism. And we have to sit back and wonder, at the birth of Christ, I wonder if we have actually done something harmful to them.
When you open the gifts, they had to be opened in a certain order. So the children got to do it first, and then the oldest, and so on. It became this really elaborate ritual that we had all centered around the gifts.
It's stressful in the extreme. It's financially burdensome and unsatisfying in a way that creates a desperation to do the holiday perfectly.
And in our family, we're so blessed. I mean, nobody needs anything, and I feel like a lot of times the gifts are kind of last-minute things that are purchased without a lot of thought for what somebody really wanted or needed.
I'd been bothered for years about the materialism that I see around Christmas and all these companies that are kind of, in my opinion, retailers that are almost anti-Christmas, and yet they're counting on 25 to 40% of their revenues from the Christmas season every year. And it just seemed to me Jesus had been taken completely out of the equation.
How much is too much? When have we crossed the line into excess? These are difficult questions to answer. I mean, even the idea of spending less is ambiguous, isn't it? Spend less than what? Spend less than last year? Spend less than my neighbor? Spend less than the average American who spends $1,000 on Christmas gifts? See, the line between excessive wealth and simplicity may be hard to find, but it's hard to escape the conclusion that nearly all of us have too much. The key is being willing to ask the difficult questions and wrestle with the emerging tensions. The challenge is to balance our desires with the needs in our communities and the needs around the rest of the world. Look at what the Apostle Paul says in 1 Timothy 6, verses 6 through 10. He says, "Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows." Notice he doesn't say that money is the root of all kinds of evil. What does he say? He says, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. See, money and possessions are not in and of themselves bad. They're not the enemy. It's not wrong to have money and possessions, and it's not wrong to give gifts at Christmas time. The issue is when our love and devotion gets wrapped up in those things. That's when, as Paul describes, it has potential to plunge us into ruin and destruction because it begins to take the place of God in our lives. Jesus says in Matthew 6:24, "No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." The real challenge begins in the first pillar we looked at last time, to worship fully, to recognize that it all begins and ends with Jesus, and He needs to be the object of our affection and the most important thing in our lives. Jesus says earlier in Matthew 6:21, "Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be." See, the things we treasure, the things we invest in and spend ourselves on, according to Jesus, they simply reveal a lot about the state of our heart. The real issue isn't money or possessions or Christmas gifts. It's the state of our hearts. The real issue isn't simply learning to spend less, but allowing God to truly change our hearts.
What does it look like to decide at Christmas to celebrate the birth of Jesus by spending less? By giving kids gifts that really matter, things that really have meaning, and not more and more and more, but the things that we give being beautiful and meaningful. And then as we spend less, we have this unique opportunity to give more. Now, we're not suggesting that you don't give gifts to your kids this Christmas. I'm suggesting you give them some great gifts, a few that are really meaningful, some that they would enjoy on Christmas Day and hopefully for years to come, not the things that are going to be wasted and thrown away in weeks or months. That's our challenge for you at Christmas. That Advent, this Advent conspiracy, would be scandalous again. That the birth of Jesus would be an occasion in which we would share from our abundance in a way that truly changes the world.
We're called to be a light into the world, a city on a hill. We're supposed to be so much different from everyone else, and we fail all the time. I know I do for sure, but it's almost kind of exhilarating, like the thought that you might have an opportunity to do something that is so drastically different from the world that at the very least it might give the world an opportunity to call you crazy, and that's the kind of crazy you want to be.
I believe that part of that begins with spending less, and in that we have the chance to give more. And we believe that our kids will benefit and children across the globe will benefit as we share from our abundance with food and clean water and things that truly make Christmas merry.
Just like
I would argue that buying and consuming hurts our spirits. I think there's something about giving that breathes new life into our spirits. And I think that's what's at the core of Advent Conspiracy.
Well, our church is an inner city church in East St. Louis, Illinois, a very impoverished area. They have children that are in schools with no books. I had to paint the picture that, yeah, you may have no books, but you have clothes and you have water that you can actually go to your sink or to your refrigerator. And we asked the families, and even the children could be involved, to bring their change for a change. It was just amazing to see how families and even children responded in such a positive way. We had pictures of children that says, I was saving my money up to buy a game, and they would come and give all of their change. The money that we collected went to a wonderful program called Living Waters, and it basically aids third world countries in building wells so they can have clean drinking water. I think it was powerful enough to show that your little bit can go a long way, and it's not just we're not just depending on yours, but you're adding this to a multiplicity of people across the world who are contributing to this same effort.
Have you ever walked through your home or your closet, or for me it's the garage. That's where the things that I buy that I clearly didn't need eventually end up. And you look at these things and try to remember what was going on in my mind or in my heart when I thought that I had to buy this thing. Consumerism in America is built on emotional purchases. It's built on something more than just the thing that you're buying. We've made the thing transcendent. You open a magazine or you pass a billboard, and refrigerators and wine coolers and plasma TVs not just offer an opportunity to cool your food in a cool space or keep your vino chilled at the perfect temperature. They offer happiness. If you just had a bigger TV, obviously you'd be happier. The world would be different. And these objects, these things that were meant to be bought and sold and used become transcendent. They become magical.
You drive down the highway and you see tons of billboards telling you buy this, buy this, buy this. And so it tells children and it tells us that we will feel happy if we give this to someone or we get this from someone.
Consumerism and the promises that are attached to the things that we buy make it more than the exchange of goods. It truly is a religion. It's something that says, if you own this, you'll be happier. Your life will be better. It promises to do things for us that only religion can do, to bring happiness and fulfillment and contentment. It'll make your relationships work. If you just give your wife the right gift. Some young men that I know watch these crazy commercials that if you spray some body spray on you, women will attack you, right? They think it actually works. By the way, guys, it doesn't. These things that we buy, they don't deliver on their promises. They're empty promises. So we end up ready to move to the next thing, buy the next thing, with hopes that it will somehow deliver. The saddest part of this consumeristic religion is that its highest holy day is the day we're supposed to be celebrating the birth of Christ.
Last year was, like, for myself, really the first Christmas to where my heart was heavy for the Christmases that I've wasted, not celebrating like the glory of, you know, our King, you know, the eternal one, the one who came to save. It's like I don't want to miss any more Christmases not celebrating his life.